Monique, Akoa, Makani, and Natasha Mack are as important and integral to everything that the Mercury are doing on the identity stamping end of the floor for the team defensively as any other players on the team for multiple reasons. They feel unheralded in multiple respects because the things that they do aren't the loudest on the box score at times, but they're as conducive to anything else that you might see that stands out over the course of the game. So that's what we're here to look at, shine some light on those two players, give them their flowers, if you will. Appreciate y'all tapping in. Let's get to the film. So before we get started with the film and diving into the details of everything that is Monique, Akoa, Makani, and Natasha Mack, both individually and in tandem with one another, we want to kind of take a closer look at the numbers to kind of set the tone and set the table for all of the context that we're going to be speaking to and why they're so impactful and dynamic as a tandem, but also independent of each other as kind of individual factions of the general defensive process for the Mercury. So let's go ahead and look at Monique, Akoa, Makani first and everything that she is as an individual defender. Looking at her numbers in terms of where she's at regarding the ways in which she's navigating screens, the volume of screens, the efficiency or impact that she has when she is kind of navigating screens and she's at the point of attack and she's steering the wheel and setting the tone for the defensive possessions for the Phoenix Mercury. As you see these numbers right here, it's really, really important to just pay close attention to how she's ranking in terms of the respects of other players that have defended to the certain level of actions that she's defended in at the point of attack. So looking at the number of screens that she's guarded against, being 7th there, looking at the volume of screens that she's navigated, and just generally the points per chance that she's conceding, which is slim to none. For an action that's one of the best advantage creating actions that teams can get into, Monique concedes little to nothing in a lot of that. And we're going to be diving into some of the reasons why she's so good with those things. But generally speaking, she's so good at that because of how consistent she is in terms of her approach, but also her awareness and being a problem solver on the fly and kind of collecting data. She's a great detective and understanding the scenery of what she's operating in, and then putting her teammates in the best position to be successful after that because of it. And speaking to that point, I got a chance to speak with Monique at practice a few weeks ago about the art of screen navigation and generally being a point of attack defender. Here's a lot of what she had to say regarding all of it.
I feel like it's an important role because, of course, like I'm taking the point guard, and you know that the guard is somebody that like creates a lot for the other team most of the time. And I feel like when I'm able to get over the screens and like not making the reads easy for them, I think that's just helped my teammates in the back. And as long as they see me putting pressure and giving like so much effort, they just have to like, you know, meet me at that level, and it just helps the team, I think. I think you also have to know your personnel, like who you're gonna guard, and also like who is setting the screen, because for example, Asia Wilson doesn't set the same screens as, I don't know, Tina Charles. So it's like, depending on who I have and like if I have the like physical dominance on them, I just have to like push them through. So yeah, it's just every game I just learned how to do it differently, and that's what like makes me good right now, I think.
So as you see with Monique and just the detail that she speaks with in terms of kind of being able to walk us through in a literal fashion what she kind of looks at, how much of that information I talked about her being a detective, understanding who it is that's on the ball and what her responsibilities are to that player's top tier skill level. You're not going to be guarding at the point of attack the same for a Natasha Cloud type of guard that you would for a Paige Beckers type of guard, to a Chelsea Gray type of guard. All of these guards are very different, but in tandem with that, you also have to take into account who the screener is, what their strengths, what their qualities are, and how you can kind of best neutralize things in respect to the situation. That's the detective part of it all, and she's a great detective at understanding and processing the lay of the land around her to put herself in position to be successful, as well as her teammates. In addition to that conversation with Monique, however, I also had the chance to speak with assistant coach Megan Vogel about the skill and the art of point of attack defense and screen navigation, and also generally speak to what Monique is as a player to the defensive end in an off-ball sense as well. And she provided some great context as far as why Monique is so good at adding value in those multiple defensive roles that she plays for them.
Yeah, Cece's done a great job with her. Cece's her player development coach. Where I think she's actually really grown is in the pick and roll too, like learning how to get through, navigate, execute our pick and roll principles. But what I love about Mo is like her arms are always out. She's always communicating. She's always where we need her to be. So she just helps our defense even when she's not at the point of attack. She's just a really good off-ball defender as well.
So as you can see from Coach Vogel, she just adds value in all of the roles that she plays. There's a great level of attention to detail and preparedness that comes before even getting to the attention to detail being in the fire. She's great with it. She sets the tone for the Mercury defensively in multiple respects. She is their best defender at points of attack, whether that be guarding a primary ball handler or a secondary ball handler that operates and sets the tone for offense. She's good at excelling at both of those things, and it adds layers to their defensive process. Now, to the Natasha Mack of it all. As we speak to Macktivity and we pull up the graphic with Natasha Mack's defensive metrics so far this season, looking specifically at Natasha Mack, only allowing 0.83 points allowed per chance in terms of when she's guarding in pick and roll. That's eighth for players north of 340 picks defended. So for players that are defending the screener in pick and roll, Natasha Mack is great with it for multiple reasons that we'll kind of dive into in detail in this film session. But what she's great with generally is using her length as an advantage. And she understands her length and how she can impact things because of it. In addition to that, the Mercury are 2.8 points better defensively when she's on the floor compared to when she's off it. And like you see in the middle number, she's also defended 349 picks so far this season. So she's involved heavily directly in action, and she does a great job of defending in tandem with Monique and Makani especially, but generally as the screeners defender or dribble handoff players defender at these points of attack for the Mercury defensively. And to that point, here's Nate Tibbetts speaking on the Natasha Mack of it all and how she's kind of grown and added some value from her role as a defensive anchor for this team this season.
Mack had a really good game. I'm going to have tough decisions going down the stretch because we've got good players. I thought her minutes in the fourth quarter were extremely important just because she does such a good job in the pick and roll. And then obviously our team is feeling more comfortable finding her in her roles and around the rim. And yeah, she's just been extremely active. I'm super proud of her. She's really put a string of some good games together, and we continue to need that.
So as you can see from Nate speaking, this was after their most recent win against the Golden State Valkyries on, I think it was Tuesday this past week. Just looking at what Mack brings consistently, as Nate mentioned, it's the length, it's the activity, and it's just the understanding of her role and how to kind of help to manipulate things in their favor while in that fire on the defensive end of the floor. And then the last graphic we'll be looking at is when Monique, Akoa Makani, and Natasha Mack are defending in actions together. So when they're both on the floor and they're both defending together. So far this season, 201 minutes together. The Phoenix Mercury have a 93.5 defensive rating, which would be the equivalent of the best in the WNBA when those two players are on the floor. That is exceptional for a team, again, that puts all of their eggs into the basket on the defensive end in terms of the culture that they've established and the identity. Those two players are unique but also extremely integral pillars to all of that because of the presences that they are and everything that we're going to be diving into in this film session. In addition to that, they've defended 84 picks together this season, and they've only allowed 0.63 points per chance in those scenarios. That is top of the top in terms of player tandems that have defended as many screens as those two have together this season. The fact that they are conceding little to nothing in terms of points per chance in those scenarios speaks to how those two, their kind of individual archetypes combine, again, to make for a key cog to everything that is this defensive team that is, for all of the things that I've seen this season, the second best defense in the WNBA, and in multiple pockets, they have been the best, especially when they get into the disruptive nature of their defense. Okay, set the scene, talked about Monique, talked about Natasha, talked about them in tandem with one another, Macktivity, if you will. Let's go ahead and get to the film. All right, this very first play, we're going to be looking at all of these plays coming over the last handful of games, the last 3 or 4 games for the Mercury, and they're all obviously going to be on the defensive end of the floor. So We get into action. We're going to start with looking at Monique Akoa Makani and her screen navigation. So she's off the ball here. She's not starting the possession, guarding the person that's bringing the ball up the floor. And this is the important dynamic of screen navigation off the ball, first and foremost, because the fact that she's able to not get screened, stay attached to the hip of the ball handler, and then continue to stay attached to the hip as you see Atlanta kind of flow into a dribble handoff into a screen situation. Not easy to guard, not easy to navigate, especially with the types of ball handlers that they have. And now the other portion of everything that we're speaking to, and you'll kind of get a catch on to looking at this appropriately regarding the film as we kind of dive more through it. But as you see it here, Natasha Mack, last season, she would have been a little bit more in this area of the floor, maybe a little bit below the free throw line. And what that's going to do is concede not just opportunity for this player to get downhill and to threaten her leverage and threaten the paint in some capacity, but it's also opening up enough of a window for where when Breezy Jones goes from screen to roll, she's going to have a little bit of space in terms of a pocket pass to be received from the ball handler. So because Natasha Mack is being significantly more dictative in these actions, in these pick and roll situations or dribble handoff situations, as we'll dive into more, it takes away options. It speeds up the decision-making of the ball handler and generally puts the other three defenders for the Phoenix Mercury in position to be as successful as they can because she's not allowing for them to have options to cycle through. She's limiting their options in tandem with Monique doing her job at the point of attack. And because of that, the Mercury are able to get into a lot of these kind of disruptive situations like we're seeing here on this play. And as we let this one play through, you see Mack doing a good job with that stab hand. This is the bit of activity. She's significantly higher up in her drop coverage this season compared to last, but she's also more active in it as well, as you see this kind of jab at, doing a good job just forcing a reaction that's going to buy that extra third of a second, fourth of a second for Monique Akoa Makani to get back attached. They stay in their defensive shell. They ultimately don't have to concede anything. The pass ends up going out of the pick and roll. Job well done. Because no one else has to overcompensate for the two people defending in the primary action. Everybody else is at home in their defensive shell. You get a good job with the jab at off the ball, the stunt, if you will, from Alyssa Thomas. The defensive shell is intact, and we're going to see Natasha Mack doing a great job in the post on initial effort, and then on the second effort, ultimately getting that tip out for the team, and they're grabbing the rebound, and they're taking off on the offensive end. Get to clip 2, and we're going to be seeing a little bit more of the same. Monique Akoa Makani at the point of attack now, as you see the ball gets over to Pow Pow, and we're going to see Monique doing a great job, as she often does, and we want to pay close attention to these details. You'll see it play out more, and I'll be able to kind of flow through the clips a little bit faster as you kind of get a beat on what you should be looking at. Look at the weight distribution of Monique Akoa Makani. Look at how she's closed the airspace, and then watch how she's ultimately going to anticipate this screening angle, be able to win on leverage, get into this other side of the screen, and ultimately also after closing that airspace, winning on the first dribble. She cancels so many screens because of her anticipation, because of her being a detective, a top-tier detective defensively. And those things help for Mack's job to be significantly easier, as well as the other three players defending around the perimeter for the Mercury. You can't play drop coverage or generally have any defensive scheme if your point of attack defense isn't on par. And it's above that with Monique when she's steering the wheel for them because of these kind of integral skills that she has and how she adds value there. So see her do a good job winning there, winning on leverage, doing a good job getting to that point. And then as we talked about with Natasha Mack on the first rep, being so much higher up in her drop coverage, but also being able to impact the ball in her drop coverage while not conceding leverage to the roller. Times it up with this kind of stab that allows for the Monique to navigate it, but also terminates the dribble of the ball handler. Honestly, even gets a little bit of a deflection, dislodges the ball. There's no advantage created in that initial pick and roll. And then we're going to see Mack doing a good job of staying just attached but defending without fouling. This is where some of the size of someone like Breezy Jones can kind of come into effect against someone like Natasha Mack, but it's not for a lack of sharpness defensively. You want to get a little bit more ball pressure to not allow for that ball to get passed into the post so easily, but this is a deep seal. This is a little bit of kind of the back and forth when you're defending the ways that the Mercury like to against a team like Atlanta. You get Breezy Jones with a deep touch in the restricted area like that, that's tough to guard. Pretty much no one can really guard her when she gets that close to the basket. So job well done in terms of the pick and roll coverage for the Mercury on this defensive possession. Then we get to this one. It's going to be a little bit more of the same. You see, again, Monique Akoa Makani closing the airspace, winning the first dribble, canceling the screen, and doing just a great job staying attached to the basketball and to the ball handler, using creative contact to win leverage, not necessarily being over reliant on trying to go for a steal, just doing a great job staying attached, closing the airspace, winning with the chest, and staying between her matchup and wherever her matchup might be initially trying to go. Ultimately forces action to go towards the outer third, and then we're going to see a little bit of a late switch situation where after Monique does a great job of harassing the ball handler and kind of sending the screen off script, not allowing for the ball handler to use the screen, she then gets back over to Mack's matchup. Mack does a good job in this kind of late switch scenario to take over from Monique on the ball, and then you're going to watch the way the Mercury work around that to take away that advantage that was created, because obviously you get a switch. Breezy Jones is just going to take that guard immediately to the post, but watch the way they do a great job within their defensive shell of understanding how to shrink space and not allow for a straight line pass. Good job from Satu Sabali here at the bottom right corner of the screen. Just being in play enough to impact things. If that pass gets made here from Alicia Gray to Breezy Jones, Satu's going to be all over it to, if not steal it or intercept it or deflect it, flatten out Breezy Jones's momentum towards the basket because of the leverage and angle that she has. Because of them being so tight in quarters and so tight in their defensive shell here, from help to the two primary defenders, they're able to cover up the roller and then do a great job getting ultimately to the switchback between these two players, as we'll see as I take the circle out, and you see where this ultimately ends up. So you get the pass out because of where Satu is. They try to work the triangle to get the ball into the post. You see Alyssa Thomas veering in from the backside, as well as the switch that takes place off the ball to get back to the original matchups between Monique Akoa Makani and Natasha Mack. Job well done from the Mercury. And then we're going to see Natasha Mack do a good job again defending in the post, but sometimes you just have to tip your hat to greatness at times, and that's what Breezy Jones is when she gets a piece of the paint after getting a post touch. Job well done from the Mercury within their defensive shell, though. Then we get to the next clip. Paying close attention again to Monique defending in relation to where Natasha Mack is. So she's going to be influencing the ball handler again to go where Natasha Mack is. So you see where the screen is taking place. They don't want to allow for the ball handler to get towards the middle third of the floor. They want to keep the ball handler funneled toward this layer of the floor where you have the sideline as an extra defender. You're ultimately going to have Dewana Bonner, whose matchup is going to the strong side corner, as an extra layer of defense, in addition to Monique influencing the ball handler to go towards where Natasha Mack is. They're just essentially playing catch, trying to corral both the ball handler and steal back the pace of what the roller might be able to do potentially in this situation. So this is what they're doing defensively in relation to one another. Job well done, obviously, as we've talked about a lot, steering the wheel of the defensive possession from Monique Akoa Makani. She's going to do a great job not allowing for leverage to completely be conceded to Kelsey Mitchell as she kind of breaks that contain. So we talked about what the goal was for them within their coverage. She's a beat slow in terms of having the angle or leverage to keep the ball handler from getting to the paint. But this is where the multiple efforts of Monique come into play, because a lot of times Kelsey Mitchell beats someone on leverage like this, and Monique hardly concedes a top foot situation like this for Kelsey to attack, going to her strong hand especially. Monique does a good job with the multiple efforts and the angle taken to get back downhill, not allow for a deep paint touch. You also want to hat tip Satu Sabali being sound in the defensive shell for the Mercury as well. Just kind of being a presence at that weak side block and just showing a body in the gap, not necessarily committing to the ball because she does have someone in the corner, but doing enough to make sure that this drive to the paint isn't a clear kind of point A to point B type of drive. Because of it, in addition to the multiple efforts on the ball from Monique Akoa Makani, we see the drive get kind of flattened out. Monique's able to fight back into it. And it does end up being a layup for the Indiana Fever here in Kelsey Mitchell. But again, it's not for a lack of the multiple efforts, but where this was lost was at the point of attack here. Not the best rep from Monique on this one. You want to be a little bit higher up the floor. You want to have a little bit better leverage in terms of getting to that spot and winning to that spot. But again, when you're playing this type of defense and you're often dictating to your opponents, it's not the easiest to win consistently. All right, next clip. You kind of get the gist of what we're looking at here, so I'm gonna kind of let it flow through and then we'll break down what's going on afterwards. So you see a good job, a really good job from Natasha Mack, understanding what her role is in coverage, understanding what's going on the ball with Monique and Makani. So you see them get into kind of a quick hand back off of sideline out of bounds, flows into a screen. And you're going to see Monique doing a good job at the point of attack. This is a good screen from Aaliyah Boston to kind of stagnate her just enough and kind of create some separation. But now it's the job of Natasha Mack, understanding, okay, Monique's a great screen navigator, a great screen is set this time, so we're going to have to funnel over and try to take over for her as much as we possibly can, find a way to impact the basketball so that Monique can get back attached as she gets back into the play after navigating the screen. But she has to find a way to buy time for Monique to do that. And this is where the growth, again, of where Natasha Mack is in her drop, but also what she's doing in her drop in terms of her activity and being able to defend in space with a guard that's coming downhill that's attacking her, one of the best guards in the WNBA. So she does a very, very good job. Again, this stab, this kind of jab at right here, the timing of it is not just, oh, okay, I have to do something. It's doing it with intentionality, and there's a certain level of timing to it and feel of the game that she's showing and she's putting on display right here, to where because Kelsey sees this kind of stab or jab at, Kelsey's trying to figure out, okay, are they switching this outright, or is Natasha Mack just buying time? And how much time do I have to potentially get around the corner to get to the basket or settle for this midi pull-up? All of this is kind of being processed in time because Natasha Mack does a great job with this jab at right here and then retreating, in addition to Monique Makani doing a good job of navigating the screen in multiple efforts. She does get clipped, but she gets back into the play. Watch how she's ultimately able to just do enough to throw off the rhythm of Kelsey Mitchell. And that's all you want to do with this. You're conceding an advantage when you're playing drop coverage, especially if there is a good screen set. But because Natasha Mack does her job of breaking that rhythm, the shot rhythm that Kelsey takes this in is not her typical rhythm. And because of that, this is a win for the Mercury defensively, all because Natasha Mack does a great job covering for Monique Makani, and they ultimately end up kind of winning on that initial part of the possession. All right, at this point, we are going to stop the film session, and this is where it will become a diehard exclusive for the rest of the video that we have. So if you want to see the rest of this video, make sure you go over to gophnx.com, click on Become a Diehard. You'll get the membership, and in addition to tons of other different types of exclusive content that we produce over here at PHNX Sports. So tap in over there on the site, and then you'll be able to get the access to the rest of this video.